Planning Commission order will begin with the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jess, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Varga.
Here.
Mr. Cicero.
Here.
Mr. Cook.
Here.
Mr. Perkovic.
Here.
Mr. Sidoti.
Here.
Mr. Snow.
Here.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Here.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes of the February 8th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Jess, when you're ready.
Mr. Varga.
Yes.
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes. Okay, is anybody here this evening to discuss item 2 on the agenda, which is the Dunkin' Donuts item? It was advertised as a public, the reason I'm asking the question, it was advertised as a public hearing for tonight, but the applicant has asked it to be tabled. He's not ready to go forward, so I thought I'd ask if anybody was here to speak either way on that. Okay, hearing none. The format we follow for the public hearings is we allow the applicant an opportunity to tell us what they'd like to do at a location. Then anyone wishing to speak in favor is afforded a similar opportunity. Then those wishing to speak against are given an opportunity to speak against if they desire. So with that in mind, the first item on the agenda this evening is a public hearing, rezoning of 19.09 acres from R4 Single Family Residential to Village Green at 7343, 7391, 7399, and 7411 Chillicothe Road. Is that applicant here? Would you come forward, please? The reason we've got this again is it was referred back to the Planning Commission by council with a couple of stipulations. I'm going to ask Mr. Zeman to discuss the procedural way that this needs to be handled.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What council indicated was, in response to some community concerns, what would a modified plan, which would not have a interconnect to Remington, look like? And so the applicant has gone back and created an alternate plan, which would not have that interconnect, and obviously what's that drive would end in a cul-de-sac. And so what the council is looking for is recommendations from the Planning Commission for both plans. The plan as originally recommended to council and this new plan. And again, you're going to vote on those separately, and whatever the vote is, that will go up to council. But obviously there's going to be some comparison between the two, and I think the assumption may have been that having new plan to look at may cause some reconsideration or some other ideas relative to the initially approved plan. So that's the reason to have them side by side,
Okay.
and to get votes on both of those items.
Okay, so that's what we'll do this evening. But if you'd identify yourself for the clerk, please.
Yeah, George Davis, president of Pro Build Homes.
Okay, now do you have any concerns about either plan?
No, I am more than happy to proceed with either of the two plans.
Okay,
I do feel I would prefer to actually do this Plan B or this new plan for the following reason. We've got a pretty much unified front of every resident in Winchester Woods and Demshire who for 30-some-odd years have lived in a secluded, private, one entrance, one exit community. And, I want to be a good neighbor, right? The landowner, Mr. Zuch, he wants to be a good neighbor to his longtime neighbors on Winchester Woods. And that's why we went back after we ran into the issues with the first plan with the gate. Obviously, I'm sure staff or administration has briefed you on the issues with the gate and why that actually couldn't be done. So that's why we went back to work, came up with a new plan where we're meeting all of Mentor's subdivision requirements. The cul-de-sacs are not over 600 feet. We have two means of ingress and egress. We were able to place the northern street so that it's in a position where we do not have a sightline issue. And, there should be some sort of self-determination for residents, and I'd just like to try to be a good neighbor to the residents of Winchester Woods and Demshire and proceed with this plan instead.
okay. Mr. Zeman, one other question. Recommendations go from us to council. It's ultimately their decision. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So Commissioners, any questions about either plan that you'd like to address to the administration or to the developer?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Varga?
I have a question. You just said that there was a reason that why the gate condition couldn't be done? I haven't heard the logic of that. Could that be explained by either the city or by the developer?
Yeah, I can probably tackle that one. We don't, if it's, Ohio law requires us to maintain in open and good condition, public rights of way. So if we had a continuous right of way in between that new street, if you want to call it an extension of Remington, we really can't gate it off. That's inconsistent with Ohio law. What would have to happen is we'd have to play with it a little bit and probably have to have a devil strip. A devil strip's just a nonsensical wide piece of property that's used for separating those types of conditions. So there has to basically be a privately owned little tiny strip of land in between Remington and the new streets, so that it's not a continuous right of way. And then there's issues obviously relative to emergency access through any gate. Basically, it would be an easement over that private little tiny strip of land. So it's a much more complicated legal issue than just throwing up a gate and calling it a day.
So let me just ask one question. So does that invalidate the first plan?
No, it would have to. There would be a devil strip there. It doesn't invalidate it. It just means there'd be some.
It'd be an
additional-
accommodation for this attempt to drive through.
At a minimum, what I've just outlined would have to happen.
So just to be clear, the first plan would have the double strip. The first plan is not a clear connection.
Well, not as recommended. Again, there was an administrative recommendation that has not reached any final council determination that there would not be a gate there at all. And so that was some of the debate that was taking place in the community and obviously here in front of the Planning Commission and council as well. So there's some alternates there. The gate was a proposal, but there was no finality to that, to whether there would be a gate or not.
So as we review the first plan, are we reviewing it with a gate or without a gate, or we make a recommendation?
You make a recommendation.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to have a seat for the moment. This was advertised as a public hearing. We have several new members of the commission who were not here the last time we had a public hearing on this, so is anyone wishing to speak in favor? In favor? Okay, if you'd come up and identify yourself for the benefit of the clerk.
Hi, my name is Saji Arumpanil. I'm the president of the Winchester Woods Homeowners Association. The question about whether you're in favor or against is difficult because I'm not really sure what that second recommendation is going to be from you guys on the initial plan that was proposed. So we'll kind of share what we shared before. I'm going to be a little bit more abbreviated because we presented last time to the Planning Commission. We also presented to the council. So hopefully you guys have had a chance to review that. I don't want to belabor the points, but I do, if we get into more detailed discussion around a connectivity, if we're able to come back and perhaps share some of those concerns, we'd appreciate that.
Okay.
So I'll try to be brief. I'm the president, like I said. Our neighborhood lies to the east of the proposed development, as you guys are aware. Me and two other people are going to come up and share our thoughts. We're trying to represent about 70 households between Winchester Woods and Dempshire. There's a group of us here. If we could just have everyone stand up just to kind of show you the representation. We're a little light because there's some teacher conferences and a choir event tonight. But we've had unanimous support from our neighborhood on this issue. Again, we're here to speak in favor of this new proposed plan with the cul-de-sac and two entrances and no connectivity. From what I was told, it meets all the designs and code requirements of Mentor, allows our development to remain the undisturbed, close-knit community has grown to be over the past 30-plus years. Like I said, you guys are aware of our previous appearances. The Planning Commission did vote last time in December, I believe, to move forward with a emergency access only connectivity between the two developments if any, connectivity. It did strike out from the recommendation from the administration, the request to have a connection to the neighborhood. Yeah, so this design works well for us. I think it helps this community as well as our own. Just want to thank Mr. George Davis and the property owner, Fred Zuch, for being a good neighbor and working with us. We've had lots of conversations, both here and outside of here, meeting with administration to come up with a plan that seems equitable and fair for everybody. Again, you know, as a community member, as part of this community, you know, we're trying to work with the process. We try to be respectful throughout the whole thing, sharing our concerns, and thank you guys for listening and hearing that. Just take into account all the work and collaboration that has gone as you make your vote. It seems to be a very peaceable resolution to a new development, bringing new homes, new families to Mentor, while preserving the existing community and people that live in Mentor in the community. So thanks for listening to us. And again, if the discussion does turn and maybe some of the new planning commission members didn't hear some of the details and concerns about traffic and safety, we hope you let us come back up and share that.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak? You're welcome.
Good evening, Planning Commission and Administration. My name is Timothy O'Donnell. I reside at 9606 Musket Drive with my wife and 3 children. I'm a career fire lieutenant with 20-plus years experience in the fire service. I'm a proud member of Winchester Woods Homeowners Association. I am here tonight in support of Mr. Davis's design, as we see on the screen, which specifically does not call for a public through street on Remington Drive. The design being discussed here tonight calls for 2 ingress and egress points on New Chillicothe Road. I'm in full support of this design, which satisfies all City of Mentor codes, including all the sightline codes set forth by the city. This design meets the needs for all the parties involved and allows our community and neighborhood to remain safe, quiet, and secluded, as it has been for the past 3 decades. Also, this allows Remington Drive to remain as designed and approved by the City of Mentor as a cul-de-sac. There have been several areas throughout the city where homeowners associations have worked with the city to find an amicable solution, and that is all we are here tonight to ask for. We have met and worked with Councilman Blake, Mr. Davis, and city leaders in an effort to find a workable solution. We have remained polite, professional, and courteous throughout this process, and will continue down the same path in an effort to protect our quiet and tight-knit community. In closing, this design presented tonight by Mr. Davis meets all city codes, including all sightline codes. As earlier stated, we fully support this design, which will allow our neighborhood to remain safe and secluded, as it has for the last 32 years. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening. My name is Jim Stone, and I've been a Mentor resident for 40 years. We've lived at 9595 Musket Drive for 30 years, and we raised 4 children there. I am in favor of this plan with no cut-through. I think Mr. Davis has just done an excellent job in coordinating with us and listening to our concerns. Now, my wife and I chose this neighborhood to raise our kids because of the safety and security provided by the limited access and the lack of traffic. It's important to note, I think, when we purchased our home, that the developer did not tell us that the cul-de-sacs were temporary cul-de-sacs. Also, as a retired Mentor police sergeant of 22 years, I know that there's always more problems and lots of speeders on cut-through streets. In the Westmore Road neighborhood, which is a cut-through from Route 84 over to 20, I know I personally wrote at least 100 tickets for speed and stop signs. And I was just one cop. Look at Mansion Drive. That's another cut-through street. That traffic is so bad there that the city had to install speed bumps in the middle of the roadway. Mentor has 10 industrial and at least 90 residential streets longer than 600 feet with only one entrance. We have provided you with a highlighted city map of these 90 neighborhoods, just like ours. I've highlighted those. The blue are the industrial ones, and all the ones highlighted in pink are all the ones, the 90 that are longer than the 600 feet. Because Mentor is just about out of vacant residential land to develop, our neighborhood might be the last one the city can force to use as a cut-through. To harm us this way, while leaving the other 89 neighborhoods intact, would be grossly unfair and a grave injustice. It's obviously not imperative to connect neighborhoods and create a second entrance, because if it were, you'd be taking homes by eminent domain, demolishing them, and building connecting streets through the backyards. We all know that's not going to happen, so I ask you, why force this unwanted connection on our neighborhood and not the other 89? I don't know about you, but to me, that hardly seems fair, does it? The petitions against this cut-through that we gave you were signed by 124 adults, representing 66 of the 70 homes in our neighborhood. More importantly, it's been signed by 100% of the people we were able to speak to. Not included were the 52 kids under 18 who will be at risk if this cut-through is approved. Now, we know from past practice the city has worked with 4 other neighborhoods in similar circumstances to reach a fair solution. Echo Drive, Hidden Hollow Drive, Chase Drive, and Grace Court. Now, besides the maps and petitions, we have also provided you with other relevant material, including a copy of a recent Mentor City magazine. It's used to advertise the city. I know it's not a city publication, but I'm sure they're sent out when people are talking about it. This publication boasts, quote, "We are a city of cul-de-sacs and kids," quote, "the unparalleled quality of life Mentor offers its residents." We're here tonight to ask you to not single us out and take this away from us. We're here to promote the second plan that Mr. Davis presented. I think it is important to note that the last time we addressed the Planning Commission about this issue, before the 3 new members were here, you voted overwhelmingly, 6-1, to not make Remington Drive a cut-through to Chillicothe Road. We appreciate that you stood with us then and hope that you realize this is still a very important issue for all of us. As a police professional, I know that the best law enforcement is not heavy-handed and considers the totality of the situation. A ticket or arrest is not always the best solution. And likewise, the best judges use compassion and fairness. So that's all we're asking for when judging our plea tonight, a solution based on past practice that is consistent, compassionate, and also fair. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Okay, hearing no one wishing to speak, we'll close the public portion. Mr. Zeman, I've got one question for you. Well, maybe that'll lead to other questions, but the question is, do we have to rescind what we voted on back in December? So that stands.
Well, it's not that it stands so much. The council referred it back, so you're retaking action on that.
Okay, so tonight we're going to vote on 2 items.
Correct.
We're going to vote on Mr. Davis's submittal with 2 entrances and exits off of Chillicothe, correct?
Right.
Or a cut-through, is that?
Well, I guess you want to call them Plan A and Plan B. Plan A is the original, originally recommended plan, and I guess calling this B might make it a little
The original
clearer.
recommended plan was a gate. So is that what we're?
It's back. You're seeing it basically anew again. So if you want to look at Plan A and recommend that it be gated, that's subject to your vote. If you want to look at Plan A and indicate it should not be gated, then that will be your vote. Then obviously Plan B and whatever various modifications you may want to recommend to Plan B as well.
So I've now got a question for the administration. The city engineer has agreed that there's no line of sight problems on Plan B?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions, commissioners, for the applicant, the administration?
I have a question for the administration. Being that Chillicothe is only a two-lane road, is there any improvements made in the future to, for instance, incorporate a turning lane that might facilitate these extra entrances off the road? I mean, is there anything in the future that would affect our judgment on the plan?
There wasn't anything indicated in the initial comments by engineering. Certainly that might change as we go through the subdivision review process, the next step, which is the more detailed step following the rezone, but nothing initially made.
So no.
I don't
Not
think it's
if-
in the cap plan.
I'm sorry?
I don't think there's any cap plan to expand Chillicothe.
No.
Okay, that's it.
You okay? Okay. Commissioners, any other questions for the administration or the applicant? Mr. Davis, you can come back forward now if you would. So once again, Mr. Zeman, we have Plan A, which is the original plan, either a cut, no, I'm not going to say cut through, a connection to the two streets, or a gate. Is that correct?
Or any other alternative you may view. I mean, you know, that's, again.
So, anybody have an alternate to making the connection or a gate?
Excuse me,
ahead.
didn't you just tell me just before that the gate wasn't a viable alternative?
Oh, it's viable. It just requires a little bit of, you know, additional tweaks to allow for the devil strip and then an easement and
Okay,
et
so,
cetera.
I mean, even I'm trying to figure out what we're voting on.
Correct.
You know.
But
So-
again, the administration did not, on that plan, the administration does not favor it be gated, is my understanding, unless that position's changed.
So I'm trying to figure out what's the most useful thing to vote on. Should we vote on it being a connected street and A and B being the alternative?
As with anything, someone makes a motion and they place some conditions on that motion, and
I'm trying to figure out what would be the most decisive for everyone's purposes, you know. Well, let me make a recommendation that we vote on.
I'll make
go
a
ahead.
comment first.
Sure.
If we decide we want to go with the gate, there was some verbiage issues with how it got approved last time. If we're going to go with the gate, the limited access gate, we need to remove the stipulation about removing the temporary cul-de-sac on Remington, because when we came out last time, it still said remove the temporary cul-de-sac. And to sort of clear up some procedural issues, as Rick explained to me, and I know Rick's not here no longer, but as Rick explained to me, we need to basically, since it's a limited access gate on a devil strip owned by the HOA of my subdivision, there needs to be some stipulations where we say in our deed restrictions, we're going to agree to plow the snow on both sides of that gate, you know, maintain it, blah, blah, blah. And you need to say that you're allowing me basically to have a cul-de-sac over 600 feet, because that road, you know, is in effect
Is now
well
in
over the
violation,
600-foot
right.
cul-de-sac limit.
Right.
So that didn't happen the last time, which created some procedural issues or some clarification issues.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just trying to think of making the vote as decisive as possible so that we choose between one thing and another versus a bunch of alternatives versus another bunch of alternatives, which, you know, I'm not sure we can be decisive.
Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. Chairman, just to make it as simple as possible, you have a site plan that says at the bottom, reviewed by Planning Commission on December 21st, 2017. There's no indication of a gate on that particular plan. So if this is the plan you're reviewing as Plan A, if you decide to make a condition that would modify the plan, you can do so. You don't have to. It is at your discretion and vote. So you've got this plan, and then you have the plan that was received and dated on February 7th. That would be Plan B. So those are the two plans, as simple as it can be, that you're considering this evening, regardless of the conditions that were placed at the last meeting.
Does that answer your question?
So Plan A is no gate, is how
No gate, no connection.
no,
No,
Unless you want to add it as a condition. It is not showing that way
no gate,
on the
no
plan.
connection is Plan
Correct.
A.
No, Plan A is a connection. Plan
Oh, so
A
it
is
does
the
have the connection,
Yes.
okay.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I see some confused faces out there.
I feel confused.
All right.
I'm sorry, I feel like there's three options here, and I know we're not voting on three things. I feel like we have Plan B, pretty clear. But Plan A, unless we say Plan A with a gate, let's vote on that, or we say Plan A without a gate. So we have to pick which one of those we would vote on, is how
Yes.
I understand it.
Without a gate but connected.
I'm sorry, yes, I misspoke, yes.
Okay.
Connection.
Okay, well, and
What's your
Mr.
question?
Chairman? Then I'm trying to, again, bracket this in terms of meaningful decisions. So I'm thinking that the vote, I would like to see us vote on Plan A that is a regular street connection.
Yes.
No gate, but connected.
Let me interrupt you one second. We can come up with more than two plans, correct?
Well, no, I mean, you're acting on the plan. What's been suggested is how does Plan A, if it gets modified at all? The original reason that Plan A was getting modified was the administration felt that there should be an interconnect, a free flow of traffic in that interconnect. I think the Planning Commission, first started talking about maybe it can be gated. And so that's where the gate came from. It wasn't necessarily something that was developer or community driven.
It was a compromise.
It was a solution to two viewpoints. Whether that's still a good solution in light of the new Plan B, I obviously that's for your judgment.
Okay, I had one request here again for a comment. I need you back at the microphone. Although we've closed the public hearing, it's still important enough that we're going to continue the dialogue, so.
So, I think you saw the confusion out here. You see I think you guys are a little bit confused about what we're voting on. I think we'd like the opportunity to share with some of the new members some of the concerns we have if you guys are considering a connection through.
Go ahead.
Okay, so, the cut-through connection, we're concerned about our sense of community that we have today. For over 30 years, we've had a close-knit community. As mentioned before, when we purchased our homes, it was not made clear that the cul-de-sacs were temporary. Much has changed over those 30 years, and we're changing the lot. I think the rezoning is one thing we're changing based on what was decided before. So, to give you a sense of our community, there is, with only one access point to our community, it does promote a sense of community. People who live in traditional cul-de-sacs have the highest levels of attitudinal and behavioral cohesion. We actually interact with each other. As you make more than one connection, and people who live on average residential through streets have their lowest levels of interaction. I know the connection point is important in terms to the administration as far as access and emergency access. But just as the fire chief expects to save seconds or minutes to reach your house from emergency vehicles, we expect motorists to do the same, to cut through and save some time on their own excursions. Research shows as traffic volumes increases on a neighborhood street, so does vehicle speed, accident frequency, noise, and even crime. It also shows that those using neighborhood streets to avoid main road congestion tend to drive at higher speeds. The combined effect of the traffic and increased speed and volume makes a neighborhood street even more dangerous. A pedestrian is 6 times more likely to die if struck by a car traveling 30 miles an hour compared to 20 miles an hour. We also have a bus stop at the top of Demshar. The street itself is very narrow, poor lighting, and doesn't have sidewalks. So the high schoolers that are coming off the bus at the top have to walk down into the neighborhood to get to their houses. Our neighbor who sits at the intersection of Demshar and Johnny Cake, there was a letter that he wrote to the council, talked about some of the requirements or improvements to the streets that's needed to kind of meet some of the code. of what a high-traffic road would look like. That road right now is set up like a cul-de-sac road. I guess, and just to summarize, I think that the need for emergency is important. We had everyone in our neighborhood sign a petition saying we accept the current response time. We just feel that the increased danger, increased risk to our kids are far way outweigh any increased time and responses that you're going to get. The 1 in a million chance that an emergency vehicle is going to need to get back into our neighborhood versus the daily risk of higher traffic and higher speeds that we're going to encounter. Just, again, we've worked with you guys, we've worked with the builder. This seems like a good plan. We're asking you that, if you're going to consider a connection, make it a non-public access connection. There's alternatives besides gates that's used in the community. There's things called geogrids that are used in both business and in neighborhoods where it's a piece of land that is that has a foundation underneath it that's drivable. That is also an option to keep the emergency access there while allowing for the independence between the two neighborhoods. The other thing to consider with the first design is the greater than 600 feet cul-de-sacs that you have to waive. Also, the impact on traffic. There was a traffic study done with the one connection point with Chillicothe where they estimated 446 trips will be generated in and out of that one entrance point. That doesn't include our houses that would use that same intersection or that cut through to get to other places. So they just took into account the new houses that were being developed in that neighborhood. If you add in the 69 houses that we have in our neighborhood, that would be over 1,100 trips through that one intersection if we use that. And that's using the same formula and equation that was used in the original study. So it's just another thing to consider. You're forcing a lot of traffic through that one point. There was concern about the traffic on Chillicothe and what you would have to do to get in and out of there. So those are some of the points. Hopefully you had a chance to see some of the other things that we talked about. I don't want to belabor, but appreciate you giving us a chance to get back up here.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Novak.
Mr. Chairman, my name is David Novak. I'm the president of Barrington Consulting Group, and I'm working with George Davis on this project. And I think to maybe try to give a little clarity to this, when you look at Plan A and Plan B, the difference is do you want to connect or not connect? That's a simple thing. Because some of the meetings and discussions that I attended, one of the concerns about the gate is that it's not an approved Ohio traffic control device. And that's, in my opinion, where the administration had some issues with it, because it's not an approved traffic control device. So I think it's real simple. You just vote on Plan A as it was originally presented, which is the connection through to Remington, or you vote on Plan B as presented tonight, and then you don't have a connection. That's, I think, instead of trying to put all these other conditions, I mean, but you could still put conditions on either one that you approve, but that really makes it simple. Do you want the connection, or do you not want the connection? And at the last meeting, when you guys reviewed Plan A, the Planning Commission felt, at least it was because of the way you voted and the comments that you made, that you did not want that interconnection. So if that's still the feeling of the board, then I think it makes it real simple that you just vote on Plan B as presented tonight. So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Snow. On Plan A, I'm sorry. On Plan A, you've got the complete connection. We talked about that. We talk about having a gate, but we don't necessarily have to have either one of those. And that's why I believe your secretary emailed all of you information on GeoGrid that was made specifically for emergency traffic and fire access. based on your past practice, if you look at the south end of Hidden Hollow Drive, you look straight over an easement, there's no gate there, and Hidden Glen goes by. If you go over to Chase Drive, there's two easements that go over to Inland Shores. There's no gate, there's just an easement. So there's actually three choices: complete connection, a connection with a geogrid and an easement like you have done with past practice, or the third one.
Okay.
And we're, of course, we're not in favor of the connection.
Right.
Thank you. I mean, the complete connection.
I understand. Mr. Zeman, again, it goes to council for their final approval, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So as Mr. Novak eloquently explained, there are two choices, so to speak. There's Plan A and Plan B. So, want to make a motion on Plan A?
I'll make the motion on the plan, okay.
Hold on, I guess.
Again, we've got the ability to send a recommendation for either plan or both plans up to council, is that correct?
Again, council does want the planning commission to make recommendation on both plans, and however you may, stipulate for amendments to those again.
Okay.
But even for Plan A, if you connect it, you're still going to put a horseshoe in anyway? So we can't be looking at, if we vote to connect, this isn't the plan we're looking at.
Yes.
You'd
Yes,
still
it
do
is.
a horseshoe with a connect.
We felt strongly that we want to slow traffic. So it's not a cul-de-sac because it's
Okay.
connecting. We want to have that horseshoe to slow traffic if we do have the connection.
And I
So
know
the plan you're looking at is what we're asking for if you do the connection.
I went back and watched the December meeting, and one of the big concerns were no sidewalks on Dempshire. And I know you talk about being a good neighbor, and if this gets sent up to council and they want Plan A, would you put walks on Dempshire?
Would I put walks on?
Yeah, would you put walks? That seems to be one of the biggest things they're concerned about. It looks like 1,000 feet plus or minus. If you put their walks in, then that's kind of a give on.
That's not an economical solution.
Okay.
Economically, it's not viable for us.
I'm good.
You good?
I'm good.
Well, I'm going to try to move this forward.
Good.
I'm going to suggest that we vote on Plan A as if it was a normal passage without any details. Just a regular straight connection with that island, the way you have it, but no gate, no geogrid, that's that choice. And then we also vote on Plan B as it stands. The thought process, and I just might want to explain even myself a little bit, is that Plan A creates another non-conforming cul-de-sac if we don't make a connection. And I don't think we should do that. I mean, but anyhow, that's why I'm trying to simplify what we're doing at Plan A. So Plan A is with a connection, Plan B is without a connection. I'm proposing that that's what we vote on with the acceptance of the
Separate votes.
separate votes, but with the acceptance of the chairman.
Okay.
Okay, should we do that? Okay,
Is that a motion?
that's a
Is
motion.
there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Well, I think we need separate votes on each plan. So motion to
Okay,
approve Plan
we
A.
will.
We said
Okay.
that.
Okay, the motion is first to vote on Plan A as if it was a normal connection.
All right, well, then that's your motion, and you need a second to that. And then you can motion on Plan B. I think that's the
Right.
cleanest way to do it on the record.
That was our intent.
Okay.
Did you get a second? Mr. Cicero seconded.
Yes.
What's your question?
I second the voting on Plan A.
Yes. So are there no conditions?
No conditions.
do
No
any-
conditions.
Do any of them?
Straight interconnect.
As
Okay,
presented.
no conditions at all. Okay. Mr. Varga,
Yes.
Mr. Cicero,
No.
Mr. Cook,
No.
Mr. Perkovic,
No.
Mr. Sidoti,
No.
Mr. Tiedemann,
No.
Mr. Snow.
No. So that goes up with a negative recommendation to
Correct.
council, correct? Now,
Correct.
Plan B.
So I'll motion The vote on Plan B.
Second.
That's with the two connections on Chillicothe, as presented here this evening.
Mr. Varga,
No.
Mr. Cicero,
Yes.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann,
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes, so that passes. So item number 2 was a conditional use permit to allow a restaurant, Dunkin' Donuts, at 5834 Heisley Road. That applicant has asked that that be tabled, so I'll entertain that motion. Anybody at all? Table?
Table or dismissed?
No, we're gonna table it. He wants to still pursue it.
Motion to table items 2 and 7 on tonight's agenda without prejudice.
I'll second.
Just when you're ready.
Mr. Varga,
Yes.
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook. Mr. Perkovic.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes. Item 3 was tabled at a previous meeting, will remain on the table tonight. Item 4, conditional use permit to allow outside dining and drinking at 9377 Menor Avenue. Is that dismissed? That's dismissed, right, Kath?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, so we'll take that off the table,
So moved.
Second.
and then call the roll, please.
Mr. Varga,
Yes.
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann. Mr. Snow.
Yes. Now I'll entertain a motion to dismiss without prejudice.
Motion to dismiss item number 4 on tonight's agenda without prejudice.
I'll second.
Mr.
Just when you're
Varga.
ready.
Mr. Varga.
Yes.
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes. Item 5, architectural review, reimaging of a commercial building at 9377 Menor Avenue. That applicant's here, so I'll entertain a motion to remove it from the table.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Varga.
Yes.
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic. Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes. Whenever you're ready, gentlemen.
We've revised the plan according to the recommendations from the administration in 3 ways, really.
Stepping
So the first way is we added doing the facade element to the back corners of the building, and you can see the wood grain that goes around the back corners. In addition, we actually looked at doing a screening for the HVAC units versus raising the block up, and we determined that it wasn't that much more to raise the block up. It'd be cleaner, it'd be neater, so we can do it. So we did that. And then finally, we first submitted this drawing with a little step in the back to make it a little bit more decorative. And administration asked us to rethink that and make it straight. And we've done that and already submitted it with that.
Okay.
So we're good with that.
Okay. Any comments from the administration?
No, we're happy with the changes that were made and including the changes to this.
Okay. And we're beginning to shield the HVAC by
Yeah,
raising the
raising that back wall
Okay.
shields those units.
Dushan Wojcik with Richmond Architects here. We did some structural analysis, and we were able to raise the back masonry wall to the height of the sides.
Good.
So,
Okay. Appreciate you doing that. Commissioners, questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Sidoti?
raising the parapet on that rear wall, I thought it was mentioned at the last meeting that you had some concerns engineering-wise or structurally, but what did you discover that you can do it?
we did a structural analysis by a structural engineer, and we have found that we could economically make that happen.
and we're gonna be able to raise the wall utilizing masonry right on top of the original wall that's there.
Okay, good. I'm going to express a concern that I expressed at the last meeting. I went to the site the other day as if I was going to go through the drive-through and get coffee. So I went along the back wall, turned, and went to the so-called drive-through window. I got my coffee and I started to proceed out. And until you hit that yellow bollard that's right there along the southerly end of the west building, you can't see what's coming west in front of the building. And your site plan allows traffic to go west. So there's a blind spot and there's a tight radius there. Because when I'm ready to make my left now, as I'm leaving the drive-through, you've got parking spaces along the northerly line there and, you know, facing Menor. And the back of that parking space to the curb of your building is about 22 and a half feet, which is like a minimum. So I got to make a tight turn so I can, you know, avoid hitting any of those cars. And when I'm making that turn, I'm not sure if any traffic's coming or if the car is going to be close to me when I'm making that turn, you know, in the blind spot. It's a tight radius. All I want to recommend is that maybe at the southerly end of the west facade, you put some kind of a sign, install a sign on the building advising the patrons of the drive-through to yield or proceed cautiously. You know, you can come up with the wording. Just to let them know that there's some possibility that traffic is moving west and could be coming right in front of them as they come out. You know, and a lot of your patrons, you know, it's in the morning, they're going to work, they could be in a hurry, they're fussing with their coffee, they're not paying attention. And if there's nothing to alert them, they're just going to drive past the bollard and make a left. You don't know how close a car going west could be to that car.
About a stop bar. I don't know. But I think you're right. I mean, you don't want,
Right.
don't want them shooting out there.
Right.
I mean, I completely agree with that.
I think
So
there has to be,
we will address that.
some warning, just so they're alerted to the fact that they're yielding for a reason. Why do you normally yield? Something could be coming.
Yeah.
So I'm
No,
going
I
to make
agree.
that as a condition, and you work on the wording.
Okay with me.
All right, thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Sidoti?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anybody, anything else? Okay, you brought building material samples with you, I see. We're going to introduce those into the record.
The building, especially on the front of the building, is made up of stone, 4 piers that kind of identify the tenant front piers. And we have,
Excuse me, you can put it down on the counter so that everyone can see what you're talking about. There you go.
Sorry about that. We have EFS backgrounds for the signage areas, and we have siding material as identified here for accents above and below the signage areas, and then around on the sides of the buildings on the left and the right, and at the corners as recommended by staff. The color scheme is fairly neutral, and grays, so.
Okay, anything else? Any comments from the administration? You're fine with it?
You're fine with it.
Okay. Entertain a motion. Anybody?
A motion to approve with one condition, which is the signage? Is there other existing conditions?
Didn't Mr. Sidoti want to add?
That was the signage is the one condition.
There is,
You need the language?
so it's with 2 conditions, I think.
Is it an existing condition?
Yes.
With
yes,
two
the-
conditions.
If I can stipulate on the one condition, are we specifically making this a condition of some signage or other?
Okay, was there a second?
Second.
When you're ready, Jess.
Mr. Varga,
Yes.
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 6 was tabled at a previous meeting, stays on the table tonight. Item 7 is a preliminary site plan of a restaurant, Dunkin' Donuts, that was tabled earlier. Item 8, preliminary site plan industrial building at 9395 Pine Cone. I see the award-winning architect, Mr. Weber, is here. I wish I had a title for you.
Radar.
When you're ready.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Dietrich.
My name is Don Dietrich. I'm with M.E. Osborne Construction Company. We are the design builders for this project. Mr. Weber is going to be our design architect. We have worked with Enterprise Welding for the probably past 9-10 years. They purchased a company that was in Perry or Madison, I can't remember which one, but in Perry? South Shore Controls, and they're bringing them to Mentor. So they purchased some land on Pine Cone, 4 acres plus, and commissioned with us to design, build a building for them. So we submitted a preliminary plan for your review. It's about a 35,000 square foot building on the north side of Pine Cone. That's the area where they have all their buildings now. And, we have allowed for a 20-some thousand foot expansion on the site, taking that in consideration for all the utilities we've designed. The site will be used up, pretty much all the land's going to be used up between the parking, the building, and the detentions. We've read the staff report, and we had preliminary meetings with planning and with the fire department, and we've incorporated their comments into our design. May not show up in this one because our meetings were very close to when this was turned in, but our next submittal will reflect all the comments that they gave us, and we have no problem with them. Concerning the staff report, again, we have no problem with what's written in the staff report. We have one clarification we'd like to make. There was a statement made about the large paving area towards the rear of the parking. That's the area where the client is going to have his cold storage. It's going to be a roof place, but it won't be enclosed. But they will take deliveries of the raw material back there. And the material will be coming in on flatbed trucks or box trucks. So the trucks have to be able to come in, turn to the west and back into that area so they can be unloaded. There'll be a fence on the west end of that for security purposes. But we need the concrete area there so that they can maneuver to get their materials in. In addition to that, when we met with the fire department, they told us that they were going to use that area in the north end for firefighting. They asked us to put a hydrant at the northerly island, which is not reflected on this plan, but it will be reflected on the final plan. We now have 3 islands in the west parking lot. The southern one, there'll be one in the middle area, and there'll be another one at the north end. And the one at the north end is where the hydrant, where the fire department asked us to locate the hydrant. However, the owner had asked us to move it over to an island that we're going to create at the west property line. So we will have 3 islands in the center of the parking area, and we will have islands on the west property line, and that's where the owner would like that northerly hydrant. So the fire department needs access to that hydrant with their trucks, so we really cannot eliminate that concrete area. In addition to that, you see some parking places at the north end. Those are going to be utilized by the company trucks. With me tonight in the audience is Joe Kadick. He's here. He's one of the owners. So that's the information that I was given. If you have specific questions about other uses for that area. I'm sure Joe will be able to answer your questions. But right now, we have provided you with a plan that satisfies their needs for the construction of this building for the South Shore Control people.
Any comments from the administration, Kathy or Larry?
The only comment was if there was outside storage, that was something that would need to be approved by the planning commission.
Right. And that, the outside storage that you're talking about is the, what's under the roof in the back?
Under
but-
roof in the back.
But not sided. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right. Sided partially. About 6 foot down from the.
Yeah, the skirt.
Okay.
Skirt, around the roof area,
Okay.
around the roof edge, skirt.
Is that according to Archimedes?
Right.
I couldn't resist that one.
I figured that.
I applaud you.
Remember that one, don't you?
We'll move on.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, let me understand something. I don't really have a problem with where you're going with this plan, but there's something I don't quite understand. The area that's listed on, I guess it would be to the east, that says maximum expansion area where you would build a building later. How is that going to be finished now?
Well, right now, we're going to, we're going to, in the operation of constructing the first phase, we're going to be moving topsoil over to the east end. We're going to be bringing that building and the parking lot to the proposed grades that the engineers have established. And then we're going to use our spoils from the footers, from the plumbing, electrical work. We're going to bring that east portion up to grade, and then we're going to push, we accounted for about 1,200 yards of topsoil to be pushed back into that area, and it's going to be seeded.
Okay.
Talk about the building?
Well, no, that's fine. I mean, that's the way you're going to fit. Now, how are you going to get trucks, I guess delivery trucks, to the cold storage area?
Well, they're going to be just flatbed trucks. They're not, my understanding, Joe, they're small trucks. They're flatbeds or box trucks, so they're going to come
You
in.
mean
on
like
the-
2-axle trucks, not?
Yes. They're not over the road, no. The over-the-road
Right,
trucks.
so
are gonna-
they would come in at the second entrance?
Yes.
They would actually deliver this material through the parking lot,
Yes.
correct? And that would, but you said you were gonna put a fence at the west end, but then I assume you're gonna have gates then in the.
The fence is gonna be around the back
The
part
fence
of
will
the
be
building,
around the
expansion
west
building.
end of the expansion, right up here. There'll be fenced-in area there, so
Right,
there'll
but I
be
mean
for
that-
security, just along the building line.
So you're gonna, just so I understand, you're gonna bring larger delivery trucks in the area that's called the truck turning area?
Yes.
Down here.
Yes.
You have 2 overhead doors, and that's where you'll drop that material. The rest of that site then along the building where it says maximum expansion area will be grassed, set aside. And that current and future access to the cold storage area will be by smaller trucks that will use the parking lot
Yes.
to get to that and get out. Okay. All right. I wanted to understand how that was working. Is the layout of the parking lot sufficient to be able to make those deliveries through it?
Yes.
Okay. Right.
Okay.
On that, I think I understand that subject.
Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant or the administration?
Well, I have a comment on a different item, but I just,
Go right ahead.
there was the suggestion that, I guess, the west elevation be architecturally broken up in some fashion. And I would also add to that not only the western elevation, but that the office area, the office component, be designed to be more representative of an office environment rather than a warehouse. So we're not doing architectural review, final architectural review, but I would suggest when you come back that I'd like to see the office area a little more defined, separate from the rest of the warehouse building.
We understand.
That's all.
Okay. Commissioners, any other questions, comments? This is a preliminary site plan, so we can address some of the architectural concerns later, subsequent meeting. Hearing no comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
You want to put those in as conditions?
Yes, because, yes, the condition would just be the architecture, future architectural treatment. It was already an item that's in there. So let's just leave that condition in there to represent it.
Yeah, so the motion is addressing all the comments and items within the staff report.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Sidoti?
Do we need to address the fire hydrant requested by the fire department on the north end of the property?
Well, I think you agreed that anything that the
It's
fire department
already,
recommends, you're going
yeah,
to do,
it's already
right?
there, yes.
Okay.
We have final drawings now, but we're not gonna turn them in until tomorrow or something on the site, but we have put the hydrant at the south island, and that will also be the location of the Siamese connection, which is what the fire department asked for.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Varga.
Yes.
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Miscellaneous review of site improvements, landscaping, and parking at 8647 Tyler Boulevard. If you'd identify yourself for the clerk.
Yes, hi, good evening. My name is Jay Romer. I'm one of the owners of 8647 Tyler LLC, the applicant, address 21300 Lorraine Road, Cleveland. I'm here also with Adrian Gonzalez, the head of real estate for Big Tex Trailer World, actually in from Texas, who is our intended tenant. I'm also joined by Matt Weber, our designer, who's done the design for the information that's been submitted to the commission. Our plan for the project is actually pretty simple. We're looking to lease the entire project to Big Tex Trailer World, and we're looking to expand the site to accommodate storage for the trailers that Big Tex sells, as well as adding some additional parking for customers and employees. Since Big Tex is new to our region, with the commission's approval, I'd like to see if they would permit Mr. Gonzalez to say a few words about Big Tex as a company, as well as their operations. And I'd like also to see if the commission would allow Mr. Weber to talk about the design in a little bit more detail.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Go right ahead.
Hello, thank you for having me. Like I said, my name is Adrian Gonzalez. I'm the Director of Real Estate and Development for Big Tex Trailers. We are the largest manufacturer of professional grade trailers in the country, and we choose our markets very carefully where we lack a dealer representation. We have 65 trailer stores across the country. One of the reasons why I really appreciate this time to talk to you is that we're a little bit of an anomaly in the world. Trust me, as I travel the country, people don't really understand a trailer dealership. If you see local trailer dealerships or stores, they're typically mom and pop oriented. Being the only national retailer and trying to do it in a professional retail environment, we are a little bit of an anomaly, and I also understand that our product sometimes doesn't fall neatly in between the lines in some zoning in some areas. So what I've got in front of you, what I'm going to do just briefly is just kind of show you what it is we sell and what we do. Professional grade trailers are all either ball and hitch and pulled. They're all, you're using to haul your ATV equipment or heavy equipment that you own. Our primary customer is a small to medium business. So typically we're looking at businesses that are from 5 to 500 people. They deploy a fleet of trailers. Those businesses require their trailers to be operable at all times. It's a piece of their equipment that they need every day. By that, they need their trailers immediately, and they turn to our stores due to the breadth of inventory. So when you see the site plan today, the expansion of the space to store trailers is a critical component to us because we calculate our sales based on how many trailers we can store on the lot to meet all the needs of these businesses that are looking for them. As we go through and you look at some of the trailers that we sell, Only about 5% or less than 3 to 5% of our trailers are actually or CDL driven. So we're looking at usually typically smaller stuff that you can pull with a regular truck. So to give you an idea, this is a site in St. Louis that we currently own and operate. It's bigger than this, but the idea is to show that it's a clean visual presentation of our product. It's very organized. It's a completely paved lot. So part of the expansion of the site that we're looking for to do today will allow for this expansive inventory. Trailers come in different shapes and sizes, even two that are the same size will hold different weights. So a lot like buying a car, you need the ability to go from trailer A to trailer B with slight variation to fit the specific needs of the business. Because of the breadth of inventory, we will often get businesses or business owners or customers every day, non-business owners, driving an hour to 2 hours to see our stores. So the breadth of inventory is a wide draw over a large span. So this would be our single location for most of Northeast Ohio from here to Pennsylvania, as a carefully chosen spot here in Mentor.
Okay.
And if the board would like copies of this for everybody for afterwards.
Okay.
Matthew Weber, Weber Engineering Services. We've looked at the staff report. We received the staff report, went through the comments, engineering comments. All of those are items that we can address for site stormwater. Any of the traffic items, they can be addressed as well. And I think some of our items that we do want to discuss, or at least review, are the items that are listed as conditions on the report. We really don't have any issue with any of them, but for maybe number 2 and number 9 that we would, I guess we'd like to discuss maybe a little bit further. And I know Adrian just was up here, but I think in regards to number 2, which is no vehicles taken in trade shall be offered for sale from the site, I think maybe just some clarification from Adrian would be helpful.
Typically, when we run into this, I think the idea is like we don't want to be junking up the site. We do take trades, but it's not like a motor vehicle trade-in. We don't have a used car lot. We don't have a used trailer lot. If you bring us a trailer and you decide you want to trade it, we will take it off your hands. Typically, and then we will in turn try to resell it. If we sell, I'll just give you round numbers, 100 trailers in a year, less than 2 of them would be used. It's that infrequent. The other thing that technically constitutes as a trade-in, because every trailer is a VIN like a vehicle, even though it's not a truck or an automobile, is if you come in and you buy a trailer from us and it doesn't fit what your needs are, it didn't meet the weight requirement for what you're hauling, or you know what, my vehicle didn't fit on it the way I wanted to, and you bring it back, we are not allowed by law to sell it as new again. So it is technically classified as a trade-in and a resale. You wouldn't notice by looking at it. It's not like trailers don't have odometers, but by the letter of the language that's in the conditions, we do take trades. It's not a trade like a motor vehicle, though, however.
So do you ever take non-trailer items in as trade-ins?
No, we do not.
So no trucks, no vehicles, no automobiles?
No, we do in some locations. Remains to be seen if this will happen here. We do an outfit business of truck beds. So you buy a truck from a dealership down the road, you bring it to us, we take a DMV approved aftermarket body and put it on your cab and chassis. If there's a truck bed that comes off, we pull all those off, wholesale them off and sell them. We don't sell, you can't come in and buy a Ram truck bed that we just took off to replace with something else.
Okay, so no vehicles?
No vehicles.
No trucks, no cars?
No, sir.
Okay. Commissioners, questions for the applicant or the administration?
Well, like I said, if we do sell a trailer that we've taken in trade, it's less than 1.5 or 2% of total sales.
So you got an awful lot of storage area there. You've got an awful lot of parking places.
Yes, I'd like to address that if you don't mind.
Okay, go right
So, without understanding where we were going to fit we fully intend to park the building per code. So clearly delineate customer parking, handicap parking, so on and so forth. Today, currently, the line falls right about here where you have it paved in the back and it's gated and this is all grass. Our typical new store inventory, if it is meant to sit on pavement, it will not fit in the current configuration, which is what brings us to expanding this out, not exceeding the setback. There is a setback here. We don't wish to exceed that, but bringing this out to here. We would then clarify on our next site plan, since this is preliminary, customer parking versus handicap parking, and then designated areas where trailers would be stored and housed.
So why could you not pave the rear area and park them back there?
We intend to do that as well. Our inventory will not fit in the rear area alone.
Is that much inventory?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's inventory and its size. So part of that appeal that I told you about having breadth of inventory to meet all the needs and do a single store in an area, not multiple stores, requires this
So in
size
the staff
requirement.
report where they talk about 20 to 40 trailer items,
Is
that a light number?
That is a light number. We would need to correct that number to a higher number, yes.
Commissioners, questions? Anything from the administration?
Well, that was one of the items that we did want clarified,
You know,
so.
see, generally, we don't put these types of operations out in between the front of the building and the street. So that's why I think you're getting a few questions concerning that.
Understand, which is also why we wanted to be mindful of the setback and not, and make sure we were within those lines, understanding that that's part of the code as well.
Go right ahead.
I can't see, so I can't talk. Let me ask this question. You're not really, it's not like an auto dealership where, you put the shiny cars up front and you get, you attract customers like that. People are coming to this location. They have an intention to come here because they're, very good. So the thought I had was because there's an issue about the fence possibly being you want to fence this entire lot in, right?
Yes, unlike a vehicle, it would not take much for a trailer to leave our property.
Right. So you want to fence it all in, and there was some question about the fence. What would be your reaction if we asked you to create a landscape buffer in the front?
Which, are we talking about
in
Tyler
front-
Boulevard side or?
The Tyler Boulevard side, where you have the,
Wow.
I mean, where instead of, that we would actually do some landscaping in the front so that the trailers in front would be to some degree
So I
shielded from the.
understand. I believe we have a considerate amount of landscape already on the plan, particularly on the Tyler Boulevard side. I don't know that it's possible to go high enough to conceal a trailer, considering some of the heights of some of the trailers that we have and other things that are going on the property. I mean, if we're talking about a buffer that's, 4 feet in elevation, I don't know that that would be feasible. And given the setback, it would reduce some of our inventory space.
No, I'm not asking you to, I'm saying in the 50-foot buffer that you already set back. You don't have anything in front of that. You're not parking anything in that buffer.
No, we have landscape there, though.
I'm just suggesting, I'm just kind of investigating the idea that.
Yeah, your thought is to take within that first 50 feet from Tyler Boulevard up to the fence.
And do some.
Provide some sort of additional.
Landscaping or buffering where the trailers are parked to mitigate to some degree the.
And that's what we've attempted to do with the fence and then with the screening up against the fence with the plantings along the fence. There are plantings along the fence, and one of the comments I believe was made in the report that to have them a little bit higher, maybe 4 feet. 4
Well,
feet
that,
high.
I guess that's just what I'm getting at, is that you develop a more, because you're not looking for curb appeal. And I'm just thinking
Well,
about.
there is, I mean, visibility is advertising, and I mean, whether it's televised visibility or just the everyday of seeing, passing by something and realizing at that point in time when, you're going to choose where you're going to go.
You'll have signage, you don't have the
like to see
building.
that.
I was just thinking
there's-
about trying to mitigate to some degree maybe the visual clutter of having all these different kinds of trailers lined up. If the landscaping is already proposed, and we're talking about something that's 3-4 feet high, I think that's what I would be encouraging, is that you would mitigate it, you wouldn't completely shield it
Along Tyler Boulevard.
along Tyler Boulevard.
I think the other thing to understand is this area up here that's being expanded.
Yeah.
We'd like to make that more, because it's in front of the building, have it be more, shift the customer, today the customer parking is here along the
Right.
side.
Right.
Have this become more of the customer parking, because then would be a better sight line into the building and our storefront. And then utilize this. Really what happens up here on a regular basis is the staging and prepping of trailers for customers as they come in and out. There will be trailers there, but it's constant activity. You buy a trailer, it has to go through a certain checkpoint before you can have it hooked up and taken out.
I'm a little confused by something you said. The customer parking is at the west edge of that newly paved area.
Yeah, if possible, we
And
can
you
move
have-
that up into the front,
You
and it
know,
would make the sight line, you wouldn't be looking down the line of the building and seeing trailers.
Okay, but that's not what you're showing us.
No, but we can make that change.
Then the trailers would be offset to where? Where would they go? The ones that are shown in that area?
What you would see, plan north and south, you would have smaller trailers and things of that nature that are lower in height. That's typically what we put up front.
Okay, well, I guess what I might ask, with the permission of the chairman, is that you present the plan that you intend to build. So I would table this until you present the actual plan that you intend to build.
Well, if I may, this is the plan that we intend to build. You were asking a question if we could do some screening and.
Well,
what we
that's just not the
made a
parking, that's
suggestion,
that's
yeah.
between the parking area and Tyler Boulevard. That's not the layout of the parking lot. Now, you're saying you want to move the customer parking in front of the building?
I'm saying we're willing to do that if that would make.
No, I'm not
Okay.
suggesting that. I'm just saying, screen the equipment a little bit from the street so that we don't have all this kind of visual clutter like the street. It's not like cars, they're not all the same, they're all different kinds of things. Do I have any support with that idea, or am I off base?
Yeah, no, I
Would agree.
I would agree, and I'd also take that maybe one step further and just the fencing that you're sort of proposing along the front setback, that is a black chain link?
Correct.
Is that what you're proposing? Is there any option to, maybe just along that front edge, in addition to the landscape requested, maybe some decorative elements that would add to that fence as a decorative type of a thing just along that front face, or the, what is that, south side?
Decorative as in, decorative.
I really don't know what's out there, but,
Yeah.
a lot of times you'll see some sort of a pier and then a section of fence and a pier and a section of fence or something like that, that would actually enhance that slightly, as well as the landscape.
Okay. I guess.
Just a
I guess
thought.
Yeah, and I guess if I may ask, we've looked at this, I've had my landscape architect looked at this, we've gone through the code, and I'm not, I guess I'm a little bit confused as to where we may have fallen short of the code in what's required. And are there certain things in the code that we've missed in the landscaping?
Well, typically, you mitigate parking areas along the right-of-way with landscaping.
Correct.
Well, what you have here is parking along the right-of-way, and we're just suggesting you mitigate some of that with landscaping.
And, and I guess that's where I apologize that I am confused, as the fact that we have provided the landscaping, it's shielding the parking with the landscaping against the fence. We provided the trees within the interior. The perimeter landscaping code, I believe, we've done a good job of addressing that, maybe even more so than, we actually thought we were going a little bit above and beyond in trying to accommodate this. So I guess I'm just trying to make sure I have clarity, so I know if we need to make changes, what changes we need to make, and where in the code those changes are, so we can make sure that we follow them. Because I'm just not seeing them in the code, and I apologize if I'm not. I had my landscape architect who did this, we reviewed the code together, again, just to make sure. So where are those?
I would think that what Mr. Perkovic is saying, you could glean a good example of that at roughly 615 in Menor Avenue,
615?
where you see the brick pillars. There's a fair amount of brick pillars and some decorative wrought iron type fencing in there.
Sure.
And I realize you want to have the area be secure. I certainly am cognizant of that, but I think, you're not a typical operation here, and we're trying to find a way.
But we are a permitted use, correct? I mean, it is a permitted use.
But you're not a typical operation in terms of the way it looks.
Okay.
And then what we're trying to do is come up with some sort of clarification that will allow us to make good recommendations for you.
Okay, so 615 in Mentor is at least some
Some of what
Some
I think
guidance
what
as to
Mr.
what-
Perkovic was talking about.
what your
was-
recommendations are.
And-
Am I correct, Mr.
Yes,
Perkovic?
and if I can just expand on that a little bit. It was just a suggestion,
Yeah.
especially along that, and I think what you're asking about in the code, I think you have interpreted the code correctly, but those are basically minimums. In your case, where you're, in a sense, over parking what we would typically see on a lot, we would ask to maybe go beyond typical, as Mr. Varga was saying, where maybe augmenting the landscape with a change in grade and so forth would actually give that a little bit more of a disguise, if you will, along that road frontage.
Okay, yeah, and I apologize, I misinterpreted it as I'm trying to follow the code, and I see what you're saying. There's some things that you would like to see if we can
Right.
implement, and only the owners can determine if they can
And
implement that.
I do think the suggestion of if you were looking at the example on the monitor, the grade area, I think if that actually became more of a patron parking and so forth, like you mentioned, I think that sort of takes the bulk of what you're putting out as far as trailers to the outside, which is a little less of a visual eyesore. I think that helps your case.
Okay, so taking and moving, as we
Yeah,
had
I mean,
inside, moving the inside to the out.
Right.
Okay,
If-
and that's what
yeah.
we're saying, that we certainly could.
Are we over
Look
parked
to it.
currently as it sits? And I know it's difficult because we have stalls, which are technically trailer display versus true customer parking, maybe a little bit. We will definitely make sure we clean that up in the future. But in the current plan, we would have kept the existing customer parking. So when we move that, it should be whatever code drives for the building along the center.
Yes, and that would be my suggestion, just because that's the visual center of the building and so forth.
Along these same lines, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so, I'm sorry, excuse me. So would the commission support the project conditional upon an upgrade in the fencing and an upgrade in the elevation of the landscaping in the proposed parking area along Tyler Boulevard? Is that what the commission would accept from a conditional basis?
I think before we answer that, you talked about item 2 and item 9 in the conditions. Are there any other items there that we need to discuss?
No,
Not as far as what the staff report's conditions were, which
Okay.
were 10 in number, right?
Okay.
yeah, so number 2 we've addressed, and number 9 we've been addressing, and I think we just, if we have that clarification, we can then make, so we can present to you what you need in regards to landscaping.
Right.
Then we certainly can move forward and.
Anthony,
can
did you
make
have a
that
comment?
decision, so.
I just want to make sure we addressed, you said you had concern with item 9, which actually addresses the back portion of the property along Route 2. We've been talking about Tyler, so I didn't know if there was anything else that needed to be discussed or clarified in terms of the additional landscaping that was being requested as a condition along that back of the property.
Any thoughts there?
No, I think the back would be fine as submitted. I think we're really,
I think in the staff report, it talks about striping some parking spaces that you guys said you don't normally stripe. Is that correct?
Yeah, we don't have any issue with that.
I mean, the site we showed you in Missouri is basically striped for trailer storage, so each trailer has a home and has a slot. It's not something we typically do in a site this small, because we have flexibility with seasonality and so on and so forth. But if the commission would like to see that, we can certainly make that accommodation.
Kathy, you want to see that, right? Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none? So we successfully resolved the item 2 on the conditions?
I believe so.
I think so.
Okay. And item 9, you agree?
Along Tyler Boulevard.
What's that?
Along Tyler Boulevard.
Yeah,
to do-
actually,
Item number 9 talks about the rear of the property.
Yeah,
If we are approved as is, I think we're okay with that. Item 9 suggested more than what's on the plan.
Which you agree that you could do?
I would be,
you were looking for actually, as a matter of fact, I think we were looking for clarification on item number 9 as a condition from the city,
Well,
from the
yeah, and I
administration.
apologize.
Yeah.
I thought Mr. Perkovich had kind of said that he felt it was,
Could you slide that
Wrong.
drawing just a little bit over?
oh, yeah. That number, and I apologize, I thought Mr. Perkovich said that along Route 2, that met the code and seemed to suffice in that area and didn't necessarily need any more. And we can certainly put some more up in the front along Tyler Boulevard.
Kathy, is it your intention that the Route 2 exposure gets a little more landscaping?
The issue with the proposed landscaping in the rear was that a lot of the plantings proposed, which was reviewed by our landscape architect in-house, was that they were rather compact and small. So we wanted more substantial landscaping along the rear.
In terms of
height.
width and height?
And size rather than numbers.
Yes.
is the intent to block the visibility of trailers?
I think to some extent.
That would impact our business. Part of the appeal is the visibility to Route 2 and being able to see what we sell.
I thought that people came from miles around.
They do, but they do have to find us, and Route 2 is how they're going to find us.
But there's going to be signage, I would assume, that you're going to ask for signage on Route 2.
There's an existing monument sign. We were not going to go in and ask for a variance for anything other than that. But we would go back as a corporate entity and revise our sales forecast if you could not see our trailers from Route 2.
I'm not suggesting you not see them from Route 2. I'm suggesting that there be a little taller landscaping back there. I mean, that's the wishes of the city.
I understand. I guess if the intent is to block the trailers, then.
Well, I'm not saying, you're never going to block the trailers 100%.
Yeah, I understand.
So.
The request is, in the location that is shown on the site plan now is proposed to have taller and more robust variety.
Kathy, is that the intent of the landscape architect?
Yes, shade and evergreen trees.
Trees is a different story.
Yeah, but in the same location, yeah?
Well, that's something I think that we can work out. Can we not?
Maybe, if there's a wall of trees that's obscuring the visibility to Route 2, then I think that's a deal killer for big techs. If you want more robust landscaping in the locations that we proposed, I think that's probably something we could live with. So actually, they're kind of two different topics.
Right.
So Kathy, is that the intent of the city's landscape architect, is to have a little more robust trees there? That's the intent, correct?
Yes.
That's the intent.
And then that, in their current position on the plan, that should be fine.
Okay.
That's clarification.
Yeah,
right?
that's clarification, Mr. Snow, thanks. We would agree to that.
Okay. Mr. Zeman, any comments from the legal department?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anything else? Kathy? Anything else?
Well, maybe I would recommend then that the applicant work with our landscape architect to get some clarity on specifically what would suffice in the
I'm
rear.
sure that's fine, right?
That's correct.
Commissioners, any other questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Let's see, how many do we have?
Motion, take a shot at it. Motion to approve with 11 conditions. The 11th condition being that the applicant shall work with the city's landscape architect to develop a plan of enhancing landscaping on the site.
Right. On the rear of the property, I think.
Rear and front of the.
And then I think we got to go with Mr. Pergovic's idea of the pillars and the decorative fencing.
And landscaping, make that a 12.
That would be number 12. And you guys will go look at 615 and Menor Avenue to see what we're exactly talking about. Anything else?
Well, I think that's good.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Varga.
Yes.
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti. Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes.
Very much.
Thank you.
It was
Thank you.
painless, right?
What's that?
It was painless.
You know what? It really was. And, the infrastructure for the electricity is good too.
Don't run the extension cord. Miscellaneous review of site improvements, landscaping, and parking at 8640, we already did that. Got the addendum item here. Architectural review, rearranging of a commercial recreation facility at 7850 Menor Avenue. The Washington Prime guys. This will be the last color change, right?
What is
What's going on? Generator.
Well, you gotta short someplace.
All those lights have been on flash out there too.
Oh, yeah, out there?
So it's area wide.
Oh.
Okay, Tony, what do you got going?
Well, I'm pinch hitting today for Matt Jerkowitz, who's in Columbus. But we're here to review the revised color change.
You had another revision, color-wise.
Is this another revision?
Yes.
This is the last revision, I hope.
So do we.
Yes. Does everybody,
You can turn it 180 degrees.
Turn around.
There we go. One more. One more turn.
where am I? I don't know where I am.
Turn it, there we go. That's good.
Can't even see on the screen.
Or can you blow that up?
It's only on their screen.
It's only on
That's-
ours.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
That's
The latest revision and design by Round One Architects and Designers. And we feel it's appropriate for the concept. I think it's very contemporary, very sharp looking, distinctive.
So how come the other two sides are not in this color scheme?
We have the north side here as well. We have the west and the north.
West and the north. How about the south and the east?
There's no east. The east is back of the building.
Okay.
There is no east.
Okay,
The west fronts Plaza Boulevard,
right,
and the north fronts Mentor Avenue.
right.
And those two were of major concern
On whose part?
on your part. Here again, this conversation was between Matt Jerkowitz and the committee.
Okay. I don't remember us telling them we needed another revision, but we didn't tell them that, did we?
No.
No.
We approved the previous color scheme.
You approved the previous color scheme, so why am I here?
That's exactly
I
why.
don't know.
You gotta tell us.
Originally, they had,
Matt calls me yesterday and says,
he says, I gotta be in Columbus, you're in the barrel.
I'm coming to Mentor today, and I said, why? Well, I gotta present a revision to the color of the building. I go, well, how long is that gonna take? And he goes, I don't know, half hour. He goes, why are you driving 2.5 hours from Columbus? Let me go for you. Matt says, fine, go.
So
I'm here.
Well, if you look at the attachment, right on it, it says architectural review approved by planning commission, November
See what you're
30th.
looking at, because this was emailed to me by Matt.
No, I understand, but this is in the package that you guys,
The same?
no, it's the one that was approved.
I think why I'm here is to ask for you to look at this revised drawing. I think Matt in round one would like to see this on the building versus that. This is what I got from Matt.
I like this one.
So I guess our question is, why does it keep changing? Maybe you can't answer, that.
I can't speak for round one, but looking at the previous design, the building was off-white, it was cream color, something they didn't like, perhaps.
Well,
And they chose something a bit
originally,
more-
the off-color came as a result of, they couldn't paint the building white like they originally wanted to. So they came with another color scheme, which is what Mr. Varga was talking about.
This scheme right here.
That
And now we
right
have a
there, yes.
third color scheme. I guess, how many more color schemes will we see?
This is the last one.
And the reason for this change is,
I think it's more striking, I think it's more what round one designers wanted.
questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I guess my question would be referencing what you mentioned earlier, is that even though, you know, I may find this color scheme attractive, to me, it actually diminishes the size of the building, but the point being, this side that faces south, which we don't see, you know, is that going to wrap around, or is that still white as the existing building, or how does that happen? So, I mean, with that unknown, it's a little hard to vote on something.
That's why I asked the question of what about the other side?
Here again, we're looking at the west side here, which faces
Plaza.
Plaza. The north side, which is the second page, faces Mentor.
Right.
The east side is back at House. The public does not see that part of the building.
What about the south side?
The south side, again, is service court.
No, that's a public parking area.
Well, a portion of it, yes. But it's also a service court loading dock area.
Is it visible from the parking lot?
Yes. Yes.
So, Tony, are you able to speak on additions if we want to put a condition in here on the,
You know, I said, Matt, am I gonna have to make any kind of presentation?
and he said
And
no,
Matt says, no, just listen.
just listen.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Varga.
I'm not only speaking for myself, color is a personal or relative thing. There's huge walls of black, not good, not good at all. That's not a color you paint a building in a commercial or retail area, black. I don't get it. The previous elevations approved were perfectly acceptable, especially within the context of the other buildings. I think we went a long way to introduce the bright and contrasting reddish colors, you know?
Yes.
But for this building, relative to all the other buildings at the mall and the
The name of the paint is very apropos for the
Well, I
concept.
understand.
For space.
But the fact that this would be this huge black,
Black is black.
black is black, it's, I think it's inappropriate to be adjacent to these other large structures. So that's my personal opinion. It's also professional opinion.
So if the recommendation is to keep it as originally approved, we can do that, right, Mr. Zeman? I mean, we don't have to change.
Correct. I mean, the motion is to make a change. If that motion passes, obviously, it's going to be cyberspace, whatever color that is. If it fails, then there is still an approved, architectural treatment for this building.
Gotcha. Okay. What's the pleasure of the commission?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Sidoti?
given that the project is well along under construction, and if we were to reject this color scheme and go with what was originally approved, do you foresee is there going to be a problem? If we stick with what the commission originally approved as far as color scheme, is round one going to stop construction and decide they're going to have to come down here and, now I use the word fight it
I
out,
don't
but-
see, no, I mean, right now, my gosh, they're 80+% complete. and
Right, that's my point.
We anticipate opening on the 31st. We can't paint the building until the weather breaks, obviously, it gets warmer, and the building warms up a little bit.
Okay.
Painting the building hopefully in April, late April, when we can.
So before you paint the building in the season when you can paint it, you think there'll be a challenge? I mean, they'll come here before us and want to really debate
The
this.
challenge.
The colors.
I don't, here again, I can't speak for round one. I'm coming here in an awkward position. I thought this was going to be approved tonight, and I didn't understand that, in fact, a previous color scheme had been already approved.
Twice.
I'm not in a good position here,
Twice, Tony.
I hear you.
The original concept and then a revision to the original concept.
Well, so,
I guess,
so it goes back to the designers of round one. They can't make up their mind, I don't know.
Yeah, why are we even doing this?
Yes.
because they asked to have us review it. I mean, that's why we're doing it.
No, I mean, I understand, but I mean, I have another question, since you're probably going to go back and make a phone call. There was, and this has to do with the elevations, we're looking at the elevations, looking at color schemes. We've already approved the materials and the colors. There was the suggestion that they were going to put offices on this top floor of this, and that would require an addition of windows and all the different fenestration of the building. Is that still part of their plan? And is does that mean that we're going to get another set of revised elevations that will show windows at the upper level?
That speaks of another major development that we're pursuing right now. Yeah, I mean, there's another 50,000 square feet of
Well,
available
I understand,
space on
but
the
we're
second
trying to
level.
make final approval of elevation. We have made final approval of elevations. And now this is also sticking out there. Are we going to get to see behind the tent before this, or is this, we're just going to get another presentation, another request a month from now, and it's going to be all different again?
I can't speak for that.
I understand. Well, you
won't
might
be-
take my comment back to your.
It won't be in a month from now. It's a huge development project.
It's further
And-
out.
Oh, it really is. First of
Right,
all, we gotta find a tenant, a user, a player for that
All
space.
right, no, that's fine. I'm not trying to hold you
And
to it. I'm
if
just,
we're going to re-image that building, are we gonna see new elevations? Probably, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do we do here tonight? We turn this down, they've asked, and then it goes back to the original plan then?
Absolutely.
Yes, a no vote on the requested change in color means that there still is an approved color treatment for this building.
Thanks. Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the color scheme, the alternate color scheme presented tonight.
Mr.
Any questions? Okay, Jess, when you're ready.
Mr. Varga.
No.
Mr. Cicero.
No.
Mr. Cook.
No.
Mr. Perkovic.
No.
Mr. Sidoti.
No.
Mr. Tiedemann.
No.
Mr. Snow.
No. Tony's gonna say, never call me again.
Findings are probably appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Yep, down the list.
Mr. Varga.
What are we voting on, I'm sorry?
Finding of facts. For the reason for the no vote.
I find the color scheme not acceptable for the environment that it's being proposed.
Mr. Cicero.
That was your motion?
No, when we all vote against something,
Oh, we
we
have to
need to
say it.
have a justification.
The reason for the
Why you
no vote.
voted no.
My reason for no is we already have an approved color scheme.
The reason.
Mr. Cook.
We already have an approved color scheme, and I like the first one better.
Mr. Perkovic.
I don't believe the new color scheme would fit in with the buildings existing and adjacent to it.
Mr. Sidoti.
We have an approved color scheme that I feel complements the existing buildings in this mall, and this is too much of a drastic change. I don't think it would fit.
Mr. Tiedemann.
We already have an approved color scheme, and I'd like to know what's going on the south side of the building.
Mr. Snow.
Approved color scheme, and we previously approved 2 other color schemes, and I question the need for a third approval. Okay, Kathy, you're on.
Mr. Chairman, you have before you item number 10, which is code amendments. The code amendments, I don't know if you want me to read that paragraph in full or not, but we are recommending, for those listening, amendments to move the Planning Commission meetings to once a month while adjusting the deadline dates for submissions. Currently, the Planning Commission meets every 3 weeks on Thursdays at 7 p.m. The current submission deadlines are at 5 p.m. on the Friday after the commission meetings, which is 21 days prior to the next meeting as specified in the code. The proposed meeting date would place the meetings on a fixed schedule, the 3rd Thursday of the month, with the deadline for submission being moved to the 4th Wednesday of the month. The change in the schedule will allow additional time for the applicant to resubmit upon preliminary approval and for the administration to provide a more thorough review. Under the current schedule, the staff currently has approximately 14 days to route, prepare reports and exhibits, and distribute the packets to the commission. Under the proposed schedule, the routing, preparation, and a review time will be extended between 16 and 21 days, depending on the month. So we've shown the changes, and we've made some cleanup of some other language with regard to the number of copies and who received the plans for consistency. There's been some different verbiage throughout the code on administrator or community development director, and so we wanted to make sure it was clear and consistent for anybody reading it. And we've noted those times and also number of copies, et cetera, as noted in the sections that we've listed.
Okay, so procedurally, what happens? We agree to this tonight, where does it go?
Do we agree to it? Do we need, you're just telling us?
It goes to council.
Okay, it goes to council. So do we have a target date for the 3rd Thursday of the month?
The schedule attached.
Yeah, we've shown it on the schedule. We recommended to start it in August because that was a 3rd Thursday anyway, per the existing
The reason
schedule.
I'm asking the question is not everybody has that packet in front of them, especially the ones watching on TV. So that's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, so we took the calendar, the 2018 calendar, and to allow time for your review, any possible changes, and council's review, we suggested that it be adjusted the month of August, which
So do you
was,
need an up or down vote from us tonight on this?
yes.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Well, let me just ask one question, or make one statement about something. I see you're making, you're defining the deliverables that people have to make. I'm just wondering about, when we do architectural reviews, and we need to see materials, and we need to see accurate, renderings of the colors. At times, we've gotten renderings that are significantly, the colors are not accurate, Now, I don't know if there's anything that you can put in here that would suggest that they need to be responsive to their own presentation.
I think
It's come up a couple times, and it's, in terms of the presentations.
the one problem that we have is while, even we ask for them to provide us with the hard copies as well as an electronic version. What might be on their computer and then we print it out isn't
I know, it's a
necessarily
real-
on the
it's a real
same, which is the
bugaboo.
problem.
All right, well,
So then what we do is that's why we have them provide the
Okay.
materials.
It was just a thought.
So is that a motion?
That wasn't a motion for anything.
Would you like it to be?
No, let's make a motion just to approve.
Second.
Jess?
Mr. Varga,
Yes.
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Perkovic,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann,
Yes.
Mr. Snow.
Yes. Anything else, Ken?
That is it.